The warning siren started screaming across Nexus 7 station at exactly 1447 Standard Time. Daeho was under a broken plasma conduit when the first explosion shook the entire maintenance deck. Tools scattered across the metal floor, and the lights flickered twice before the emergency reds kicked in. He pulled himself out from under the conduit and wiped the grease from his hands. Through the thick window of the maintenance bay, he could see smoke pouring from the main docking area. Orange flames reflected off the station's metal walls, growing bigger with each passing second. All personnel evacuate Docking Bay 7 immediately, the station computer announced in its calm, emotionless voice. Repeat, evacuate Docking Bay 7. Daeho grabbed his tool belt and headed for the exit. He had worked on Nexus 7 for 6 years, fixing engines and life support systems for traders from across the galaxy. He knew every corridor and every emergency exit. But something made him stop at the window one more time. That was when he heard it. Through all the noise of alarms and rushing footsteps, through the crackling of flames and groaning of damaged metal, he heard a sound that made his chest tight. It was high-pitched and desperate, like a child crying. The universal translator chip in his ear could not quite process it, but he knew fear when he heard it. Nobody else is in there. Someone shouted behind him. It was Taeyong, his best friend and fellow mechanic. Come on, we need to go. But Daeho was already moving toward the docking bay instead of away from it. His friend called his name, but the sound faded as Daeho broke into a run. He knew this was stupid. He knew he should follow the evacuation order. But that crying sound would not leave his head. The heat hit him like a physical wall when he reached the docking bay entrance. A cargo ship sat in the middle of the bay, flames covering half of it. The vessel had strange curved designs that Daeho recognized immediately. It was a Drakvin ship belonging to the dragon-like aliens who were known across the galaxy for their fierce pride and honor. Through the smoke, he spotted the emergency fire suits hanging on the wall. He grabbed one and pulled it on as fast as his shaking hands would allow. The suit was designed for short exposure only, maybe 5 minutes maximum in serious heat. After that, the cooling system would fail. Daeho did not think about that. He thought only about the crying sound that was getting weaker. He stepped into the inferno. The flames roared around him, angry and alive. Even through protective suit, he could feel the terrible heat. Smoke burned his eyes and made breathing difficult despite the suit's air filter. He moved forward, following the sound, stepping over burning cargo containers and melted equipment. Then he saw it. Behind a fallen support beam, trapped under a piece of the ship's burning hull, was a small creature. It was no bigger than a large dog, with scales that shimmered between blue and silver. Its wings were folded tight against its body, and its large eyes were filled with tears that evaporated in the heat. A Drakvin hatchling. The little dragon saw him and cried louder, reaching out with one small clawed hand. Its scales were still soft, not yet hardened like adult Drakvin. The flames were burning it. Daeho forgot about everything else. He forgot about the danger, forgot about the fire, forgot that this creature was an alien species he barely understood. He saw only a child in pain. He grabbed the burning hull piece with his gloved hands and pushed. It was incredibly heavy, and the heat made his muscles scream in protest. But fear and desperation gave him strength he did not know he had. The hull piece shifted, then moved, then finally crashed aside. The hatchling scrambled forward, and Daeho scooped it up in his arms. It was heavier than it looked, solid and real. He pulled it against his chest, trying to shield it from the flames with his own body. The little dragon stopped crying and pressed its face against the suit. Getting out was harder than getting in. The fire had spread, blocking the path he had used. Daeho's air filter was starting to fail, filling his lungs with smoke. His vision blurred. The suit's cooling system beeped a warning that he was running out of time. He stumbled forward, nearly fell, caught himself. The exit seemed impossibly far away. His legs felt like they were made of lead. The hatchling in his arms made a small sound, and somehow that kept him moving. When he finally crashed through the docking bay doors, hands grabbed him immediately. Station security pulled him away from the flames. Medical teams rushed forward with emergency equipment. Someone tried to take the hatchling from his arms, but the little dragon held on to him tightly, refusing to let go. Get them to medical now, someone shouted. Deho felt himself being lifted onto a stretcher. The hatchling was still pressed against his chest, and he kept his arms around it even though every movement hurt. His vision was fading, turning gray at the edges. Then the strangest thing happened. The hatchling lifted its small head and pressed its forehead directly against Deho's face, right above his eyes. Something warm flowed through him, not painful but intense. It felt like lightning and sunlight mixed together. Glowing marks appeared on his skin, spreading from where the hatchling touched him. They crawled down his face, across his neck, spreading over his arms and chest like living tattoos. The marks were beautiful and terrifying, glowing with soft golden light. They looked like dragon scales drawn in fire. "What in the stars?" someone whispered. Deho tried to speak, tried to ask what was happening, but the darkness finally won. His eyes closed, and he felt himself falling into unconsciousness. The last thing he remembered was the warm weight of the hatchling on his chest, and a single word that appeared in his mind. Clear as a bell. Vera. It was not his thought. It was hers. When Deho woke up 3 days later, he found himself in a medical room surrounded by 7-foot-tall dragon warriors in ceremonial armor. Their scales gleamed like precious metal, and their eyes watched it with an intensity that made him want to hide under the blankets. An older Drachman stepped forward. His scales were deep bronze with silver along the edges. He wore robes instead of armor, and his presence filled the entire room. "Human," the elder said in a deep, rumbling voice, "do you understand what you have done?" Deho looked down at his arms. The glowing marks were still there, no longer bright, but visible under his skin like metallic tattoos. They moved slightly when he breathed, as if alive. "I saved a child," Deho said quietly. His throat was raw from smoke. "That is all I know." The elder's expression was impossible to read. "You are soul-marked human, bonded to dragons. This has not happened in 1,000 years. Never to an alien species." "What does that mean?" "It means," the elder said slowly, "that everything has changed. For you, for the hatchling you saved, and perhaps for the entire galaxy." In the corner of the room, the small dragon hatchling watched him with those large, intelligent eyes. When their eyes met, Deho felt a wave of warmth and gratitude flow through their connection. She was safe. That was all that mattered. He had no idea yet just how much that one moment of compassion would change his life forever. The news spread through Nexus 7 station faster than fire. A human mechanic had been soul-marked by dragons. Within hours, every alien species on the station knew about it. Within a day, messages were being sent across the galaxy. Deho spent his first week after waking up in the medical center. Doctors from 3 different species examined him, trying to understand the marks on his skin. They ran tests and scans, but nothing could explain what had happened. The marks were not tattoos or scars. They were something else entirely, something that lived between his cells and his soul. Station Administrator Jiwoo visited him on the 8th day. She was a serious woman in her 40s who had managed Nexus 7 for 12 years. Nothing surprised her anymore, or so everyone thought. But when she looked at the marks glowing softly on Deho's arms, her professional mask slipped for just a moment. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" she asked, sitting down beside his bed. "Save a life," Deho replied. He was tired of people asking him that question. "You have tied the fate of every human on this station to the Drachman honor codes." Jiwoo said, "The Drachman are powerful, but they are also very traditional. Their laws are thousands of years old. And now you are part of those laws." Deho looked at his marked hands. "I did not ask for this." "I know," Jiwoo said, her voice softening slightly. "But here we are. The Drachman Elder Council is arriving tomorrow. They want to speak with you." The elder from before, whose name was Torvak, returned the next morning. With him came 2 other Drachman who made Deho's breath catch. They were clearly warriors, their scales polished like weapons, their movements precise and powerful. But there was also gentleness in how they looked at the small hatchling sleeping in the corner of the room. "I am Commander Hyan," the male Drachman said. His voice was deep like thunder. "This is my mate, Nari. You saved our daughter." Deho stood up from the bed, feeling very small and very human. I am glad she is safe. Nari moved forward, her silver blue scales shimmering in the light. She was smaller than her mate, but somehow more intimidating. You gave her your name in the old way. You shielded her with your body. You accepted the soul bond when she offered it. Do you understand what this means? The elder said, I am bonded to dragons now. Deho answered carefully. You are bonded to our daughter, Hyan corrected. But through her, you are connected to all Drakvin. We feel your presence like a star in our minds. Every dragon in the galaxy will know you now. Torvak stepped forward. Come, we must teach you about the marks before the council arrives. You have much to learn. The training began immediately. Torvak took Deho to a private room where they could work without interruption. The old dragon explained that the soul marks gave Deho abilities he never had before. Close your eyes, Torvak instructed. Reach out with your mind. Tell me what you feel. Deho tried. At first, he felt nothing. Then slowly, like dawn breaking, he became aware of presences around him, warm spots in his consciousness. He could feel Torvak's patience, Vera's contentment as she slept, and farther away, the protective concern of Hyan and Nari. I can feel them, Deho whispered. The Drakvin. I can feel their emotions. Good, Torvak said. This is the first gift of the marks. You will always know when dragons are near, and you will understand their hearts. Over the next few days, Deho learned more. The marks let him withstand heat that would kill a normal human. When Torvak had him place his hand in a container of boiling water, Deho felt only warmth. The marks also created a telepathic link with Vera, allowing them to share thoughts and feelings across distances. But the marks came with responsibilities too. Torvak explained the weight of Drakvin honor codes. If any Drakvin called for help, Deho was bound to answer if he could. If he acted dishonorably, it would shame not just himself but Vera and her entire family. The bond was a gift and a chain at the same time. Some of our people will not accept this, Torvak warned. They believe only Drakvin can carry the soul marks. They will test you. The test came sooner than expected. A Drakvin warrior named Ravik arrived on the station, demanding to see the marked human. He was massive, even for a dragon, with dark red scales and scars crossing his chest. He stood in the station's main hall and declared that the bond was false. No human can bear the weight of dragon honor, Ravik announced loudly. This marking is a mistake, an accident. The human should be freed from the marks before he brings shame to us all. Deho stood before Ravik, very aware of how small and fragile his human body was compared to the dragon warrior. I did not ask the marks, but I will not dishonor the life I saved. Words are easy, Ravik growled. I challenge you to prove your worth. 3 trials, as the ancient codes demand. If you fail, you will ask the hatchling to remove the marks and end this foolishness. Torvak tried to intervene. This is not necessary. The marks were given freely. The marks were given by a frightened hatchling to a stranger, Ravik countered. We must know if this human can truly bear what he has been given. Hyan and Nari stood beside Deho, and he felt their conflict through the bond. They were grateful to him, but they also worried. Humans were not built like Drakvin. The trials would be dangerous. I accept, Deho said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Jiwoo, who had been watching from the crowd, shook her head in disbelief. Taeyong, his friend, looked terrified, but Deho kept his eyes on Ravik. I accept your challenge, Deho repeated. Not to prove anything to you, but to honor Vera. She trusted me when she was afraid. I will not betray that trust. Something shifted in Ravik's expression. Not quite respect, but perhaps the beginning of it. Very well, human. The first trial begins tomorrow. Prepare yourself. As the crowd dispersed, Jiwoo assigned security officer to stay with Deho. Lieutenant Boare was a tough woman who had served in the Human Defense Forces before joining station security. She looked at Deho like he was crazy. You know these trials are designed for creatures who breathe fire and have scales like armor, right? Boare said. You are a mechanic who fixes engines. I know, Deho replied. And you're going to try anyway? I have to. Bo-Ra sighed and checked her weapon. Then I guess I better make sure you survive long enough to fail properly. Come on, let us see what we're dealing with. That night, Dae-Ho could not sleep. He sat by the window, looking out at the stars. Vera came and curled up beside him, her small body warm against his side. Through their bond, he felt her worry. I am scared, she admitted in his mind. Her telepathic voice was young and uncertain. Me too, Dae-Ho thought back. Why did you save me? You could have died. Dae-Ho thought about that. Because you needed help. That is enough reason. Will you really do the trials? Yes. What if you get hurt? Then I get hurt. But I will not give up on you, Vera. I promise. The little dragon pressed closer, and Dae-Ho felt a wave of fierce affection through their bond. Whatever happened in the trials, he knew one thing was certain. He had gained something precious that day in the fire, a connection that went beyond species or logic, a friendship that had been born in fear and sealed in trust. Tomorrow he would face his first trial. Tonight, he simply held on to that feeling and hoped it would be enough to carry him through whatever came next. The trial arena was built in the station's largest cargo bay. Drakvin workers had transformed the empty space overnight, installing heat generators and plasma vents that made the air shimmer with waves of extreme temperature. Hundreds of aliens gathered to watch, filling the observation platforms above. Dae-Ho stood at the entrance, wearing simple clothes that Torvak had given him. The old dragon had explained that he could not use protective gear for the trials. The soul marks would either protect him or they would not. There was no middle ground. The first trial is endurance, Torvak said. You must cross the burning walk. It is a path suspended over superheated plasma. For Drakvin, it tests patience and mental strength. For you, it will test everything. Bo-Ra stood beside Dae-Ho, her arms crossed. This is insane. One wrong step, and you'll fall into plasma hot enough to melt steel. I know, Dae-Ho said. His mouth was dry, but his hands were steady. He had spent all night thinking about this moment. Fear was useless now. Ravik appeared at the arena entrance, his red scales gleaming. Are you ready, human? You may still withdraw. There is no shame in accepting your limitations. I am ready, Dae-Ho replied. The arena doors opened, and heat rolled out like an invisible wave. The burning walk stretched before him, a narrow metal platform only 2 feet wide, suspended 50 feet above churning plasma that glowed white and orange. The heat was so intense that even standing at the entrance made sweat pour down Dae-Ho's face. He stepped onto the platform. Immediately, the marks on his skin began to glow. They pulsed with golden light, spreading cooling sensations through his body. The unbearable heat became merely uncomfortable. Dae-Ho took another step, then another. The platform swayed slightly under his weight. Below, the plasma surged and bubbled. He could hear it hissing. Hungry! The platform was about 100 feet long. A simple walk under normal conditions. But here, with heat distorting his vision and his heart pounding against his ribs, it felt like miles. Halfway across, something changed. The plasma vents below activated on a cycle, sending jets of superheated gas upward. The first one erupted just behind Dae-Ho, making the platform shake. He stumbled, caught himself, his arms windmilling for balance. In the observation area, Vera cried out. Through their bond, Dae-Ho felt her fear like ice in his chest. He forced himself to breathe, to focus. He could not fail her. Not now. He watched the plasma vents carefully. Years of working with engines and power systems had taught him to recognize patterns. The vents were not random. They followed a sequence, a rhythm. He counted in his head, timing the surges. When the next vent prepared to erupt, Dae-Ho was already moving. He stepped forward as the plasma shot up behind him, the heat singing the hair on the back of his neck. Another step, another vent dodged. He moved like he was dancing with the fire itself, using his mechanics' understanding of systems and timing. The watching crowd grew silent. Even Ravik leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. Dae-Ho reached the other side and stepped off the platform. His legs shook and his clothes were soaked with sweat, but he was alive. The marks on his skin slowly dimmed back to their usual soft glow. Ravik nodded slowly. You survived the first trial. But clever timing will not save you in the second. The second trial began the next day. This time, the arena was configured as a fighting ring. Daeho would face a Draken warrior in single combat. Not Ravik himself, but a younger warrior named Kale who was still twice Daeho's size and covered in natural armor scales. Bo-Ra tried to give Daeho advice. Stay mobile. Do not let him corner you. Use your size. You are smaller and faster. Faster than a dragon? Daeho asked doubtfully. Faster than a big dragon who thinks he has already won. Bo-Ra corrected. Taeyong brought Daeho his tool belt. I know you are not supposed to use weapons, but these are just your work tools, right? Maybe they will help. Daeho looked at the belt. His plasma cutter, magnetic clamps, wire spools, and various other repair equipment. Not weapons exactly, but tools he knew how to use. He strapped the belt on. The fight began brutally. Kale charged immediately, his claws extended. Daeho dove to the side, rolling across the arena floor. He came up running, circling away from the dragon's powerful strikes. Stand and fight, human! Kale roared, but Daeho had no intention of fighting strength against strength. That was a battle he would lose in seconds. Instead, he studied the arena itself. The walls had power conduits for the observation screens. The floor had magnetic anchor points for equipment. Everything was part of a system, and systems could be used. When Kale charged again, Daeho pulled out his magnetic clamps and threw them at the floor anchor points. They activated instantly, and he pushed the dragon toward them. Kale's metallic armbands were pulled downward by the magnetic field. Throwing off his balance, Daeho used his plasma cutter to create bright flashes of light, temporarily blinding his opponent. He used his wire spools to create trip lines across the arena. He turned the fighting ring itself into his weapon, using every trick a mechanic knew about how things worked. But tricks could only last so long. Kale adapted quickly, and eventually a sweeping tail strike caught Daeho in the ribs. He flew backward, hitting the arena wall hard. Pain exploded through his chest. Something cracked. Kale stood over him, breathing hard. Yield, human. You fought well, but this is over. Daeho tasted blood in his mouth. Through the bond, he felt Vera's terror and Hyen's respect. He felt Nari's quiet pride. They did not expect him to win. They expected him to honor the trial by giving his best. But giving up was not in Daeho's nature. He thought about the hatchling crying in the fire, about the promise he had made. He pushed himself up. Not yet, he said through broken lips. He charged, not with any hope of winning, but because some things mattered more than victory. He fought until Kale finally pinned him to the ground, unable to move. I yield. Daeho finally whispered. Kale released him and stepped back. The dragon warrior bowed slightly. You have a human body, but a dragon's heart. I am honored to have fought you. Ravik entered the arena, his expression unreadable. You lost the combat trial. Yes, Daeho agreed, coughing. But you refused to surrender until you had nothing left to give. You protected honor over life. This is a Drakvan way. Ravik's eyes softened slightly. Medical teams will heal you. The final trial comes in 3 days. In the medical center, Vera would not leave Daeho's side. She curled up on his bed, her small body trembling. You got hurt because of me. I got hurt because I chose to fight. Daeho thought back through their bond. That is different. What is the third trial? I did not know yet. The third trial was announced 2 days later. It was not physical at all. Daeho would face the Council of Elders and answer a moral question. His answer would determine if he truly understood what it meant to carry the soul marks. The council chamber was circular, with 7 elder Drakvans seated in a half-circle. Torvak was among them. Ravik stood to the side as witness. Daeho stood in the center, very aware that this trial might be harder than the first 2 combined. Elder Seraph, the oldest of the council, spoke first. Human Daeho, we present you with an ancient question. A ship carries 100 souls. To save them, you must sacrifice 10. But those 10 are innocent and do not volunteer. What do you choose? Daeho stood silent for a long moment. He thought about right and wrong, about honor and necessity. Finally, he spoke. I choose to live with the weight of whatever decision I make. If I sacrifice the 10, I save 90 but carry the guilt of those deaths forever. If I save no one, I preserve my own innocence but fail everyone. There's no right answer. There's only the courage to choose and accept the consequences. The chamber was quiet. Then Torvak smiled. The first time Deho had seen the old dragon truly smile. That is the answer the first soul marked. Torvak said, "Wisdom is not knowing the right path. It is accepting that sometimes there is no right path, only the one you can walk." Ravik stepped forward and bowed deeply. "I acknowledge your worth, Deho of humans. You carry the marks with honor." But even as relief washed through him, Torvak's expression grew serious. "The trials are complete, but your true challenges are just beginning. The marks have awakened old prophecies. Forces across the galaxy will soon know what you are, and they will come." 3 weeks passed after the trials ended. Deho tried to return to his normal life, fixing engines and repairing systems in the maintenance bay. But nothing was normal anymore. Drakvan visitors arrived at Nexus, 7 almost daily, traveling from distant sectors just to see the marked human. Some brought gifts. Others brought requests for help. A merchant whose ship had been attacked by pirates asked Deho to speak on his behalf to station security. A family whose child was sick asked him to bless their daughter for healing. An elder whose clan faced a territorial dispute wanted his wisdom to solve their problem. The requests never stopped. "You need to set boundaries," Taeyong said one evening. He sat with Deho in the maintenance bay, sharing their usual meal of station rations. "You cannot help everyone. You are still just one person." "The marks make me responsible," Deho replied, looking at the glowing patterns on his arms. "If a Drakvan asks for help, I am honor-bound to try." "Then you will work yourself to death," his friend said bluntly. "Is that honorable?" Before Deho could answer, Boare entered the bay, her expression grim. "We have a problem. Jiwoo wants to see you immediately. Something about increased surveillance around the station." The administrator's office was filled with holographic displays, showing ship movements near Nexus 7. Jiwoo looked tired, dark circles under her eyes. "We have been monitoring unusual activity for the past week. Ships without proper identification, appearing briefly on our sensors, then disappearing. Someone is watching the station." "Who?" Deho asked. "We do not know, but I received this yesterday." She activated a display, showing a message written in standard galactic script. "It is a threat. They say the soul marking upsets the balance of power. They want you removed from the station, or they will take action." Hyan, who had also been summoned to the meeting, growled low in his throat. "The collective. It must be them." "What is the collective?" Deho asked. "A shadow organization," Nari explained. She had accompanied her mate to the meeting. They operate across multiple sectors, manipulating events to maintain what they call order. They fear anything that could shift the balance of power between species. "They see you as a threat," Jiwoo added. "A human bonded to dragons could change diplomatic relationships across the galaxy. They want to eliminate that possibility." Boare checked her weapon automatically. "We increase security. Double the guards around Deho and the Hatchling. No one unauthorized gets near them." But increasing security could not stop what happened next. Nari spent her days in the station's library, researching the history of soul marking in ancient Drakvan records. She discovered something that made her scales pale with fear. "The prophecy," she whispered, calling Deho and the others to the library late one night. "I found it in texts that are 3,000 years old. When fire marks flesh not scaled, the old enemy shall wake, and stars shall bleed." "What does that mean?" Deho asked. "I do not know," Nari admitted. "But every major soul marking in history came during times of great danger. The marks were never just a bond. They were a warning." Torvak studied the ancient texts with concern. The last marking occurred during the Great War between the primordials and the unified species. The marked one became a bridge that ended the conflict. But the text also mentioned a dark period afterward, when someone tried to recreate the marking artificially. Why would anyone do that? Taeyong asked. "Power." Hyan said simply. The soul mark can unite species, command respect across borders. In the wrong hands, that influence could be devastating. The attack came 2 days later. Deho and Vera were in the lower market district, buying supplies. The hatchling had grown larger over the past weeks, now the size of a full-grown dog. She stayed close to Deho, her silver-blue scales gleaming under the market lights. Boare accompanied them, always alert. But even her training could not predict what happened next. The lights went out suddenly. Emergency backups failed. In the darkness, shapes moved. Deho felt a sharp pain in his neck, and his legs went weak. Someone had shot him with a tranquilizer dart. Vera, run, he tried to shout, but his words came out slurred. He heard Boare fighting, heard her weapon firing. Then he heard Vera's frightened cry as someone grabbed her. The last thing Deho saw before unconsciousness took him was figures in dark suits dragging the struggling hatchling away. When he woke, everything hurt. His head pounded, and his mouth tasted like chemicals. He was in a small cell with metal walls and a single light overhead. No windows, no obvious door. Through the marks, he could feel Vera nearby, terrified but alive. A voice came through a speaker in the wall. "Good, you are awake. I apologize for the crude methods, but you are difficult to approach normally." "Where's Vera?" Deho demanded. "Safe for now. My name is Dr. Sung-min. I am a researcher for the collective. I have studied the soul-marking phenomenon for 20 years. You and the hatchling are fascinating subjects. Let her go. She is just a child." "She is the key to understanding the bond," Dr. Sung-min replied. "You see, we believe the soul marking can be replicated artificially. Imagine what that would mean. We could create bonds between any species, control diplomatic relationships, prevent wars before they start. By kidnapping and experimenting on people." Deho pulled against the restraints, holding him to the examination table. "By understanding what makes you special. Your marks are not mystical, Deho. They are biological, a genetic response triggered by Dracvan DNA interacting with compatible alien physiology. We can learn to reproduce it." Over the next hours, Dr. Sung-min ran tests. Scanners mapped every cell in Deho's body. Needles drew blood samples. Machines measured the energy flowing through the marks. Through it all, Deho reached out to Vera through their bond, trying to comfort her. "I will get us out," he promised. "I am scared," she thought back. "I know, but remember what we learned. We are stronger together." Meanwhile, on Nexus 7, chaos erupted. Boare woke in the medical center with a concussion and immediately demanded to lead the rescue mission. Jiwoo mobilized every security officer on the station. Hyen called in the Dracvan Defense Fleet, and warships began arriving within hours. Taeyong used his skills with technology to track the kidnapper's ship. The trail led to an abandoned research facility in a dead sector space, a place where no one would think to look. "We go in fast and hard," Hyen planned, his scales darkened with rage. "They took my daughter. They will regret that choice." "We need to be careful," Jiwoo warned. "If they harm Deho or Vera during a frontal assault, we will never forgive ourselves." Boare studied the facility's blueprints. "I can get a small team inside through the maintenance shafts. We extract them quietly while you provide a distraction at the main entrance. The rescue operation launched at dawn, station time." Boare led a team of 3 through the facility's outer defenses. Hyen and a squad of Dracvan warriors attacked the main entrance, drawing the collective's forces away from the prisoners. Inside his cell, Deho heard the explosions. He felt hope surge through his chest. Through the marks, he felt Hyen's fury and determination. Help was coming. Dr. Sung-min's voice came through the speaker. "Panic now. The experiment is not complete. I need more time." "You have no time left," Deho said. The cell door exploded inward. Boare stood there, weapon ready. "Come on, we are leaving." They found Vera in the next room, trapped in a containment field. Deho deactivated it, using his knowledge of power systems, and a hatchling launched herself into his arms. The reunion through their bond was overwhelming, joy and relief mixing together. But as they escaped the facility, Dr. Sung-min's final words echoed to the complex speakers. You cannot stop what I have started. The data is already transmitted. Others will continue my work. The marks can be replicated, and when they are, everything will change. The rescue ships fled as the research facility activated its self-destruct sequence. Behind them, the station exploded in a ball of fire, but the damage was already done. Dr. Sungmin had escaped with crucial information about the soul-marking process. Back on Nexus 7, Deho held Vera close while Nari examined them both. They were physically unharmed, but something felt wrong. The marks on Deho's skin flickered irregularly, and Vera seemed exhausted beyond measure. The experiments destabilized something, Nari said quietly. I do not know what yet, but I can feel it through the family bond. Something is waking up. That night, alarms began sounding across the sector. Ancient technology, dormant for thousands of years, suddenly activated. Automated defense systems belonging to a long-dead civilization came online, and all of them were targeting ships belonging to humans and Drakvin. The prophecy was coming true. The old enemy was waking, and the stars were about to bleed. The attack started small. A cargo ship disappeared near the outer rim. A mining colony lost all communication. Then an entire space station went dark. Its 3,000 inhabitants simply gone. Within a week, panic spread across the galaxy. The machines responsible were unlike anything the current civilizations had seen. They were massive, built from materials that scanners could barely identify. They moved through space without engines, struck without warning, and ignored all attempts at communication. They targeted human and Drakvin ships exclusively, leaving other species untouched. Deho stood in Jiwoo's office, watching reports flood in on holographic displays. Each red marker represented an attack. There were dozens now, spreading like a disease across known space. They are calling it the bleeding, Jiwoo said quietly, because wherever these machines appear, space itself seems to turn red with warning lights and emergency signals. The prophecy, Deho whispered, stars shall bleed. Torvak had spent days in the archives, finally emerging with ancient records that explained everything. The primordials, a civilization that existed thousands of years before current species reached the stars, had created the soul marking as a defense mechanism. When multiple species learned to bond to the marks, they became unified, powerful enough to face cosmic threats. But the primordials made a mistake. Torvak explained to the gathered leaders. They became arrogant. They created automated guardians to protect the galaxy from species that might repeat their errors. These machines were programmed to activate if anyone tried to artificially recreate the soul bond. Dr. Sungmin's experiments trigger that failsafe. So these machines think we are a threat? Hyan asked. They think we are trying to become like the primordials, and their programming says to eliminate such threats before they grow too powerful. Boare slammed her fist on the table. How do we stop them? We complete what the primordials started, Nari said, her scales pale with fear. We create a true multi-species bond. Not artificial like Dr. Sungmin wanted, but natural, willing, like what happened between Deho and Vera. Everyone turned to look at Deho. He felt their expectations like physical weight. You want me to bond with more people? More species, he asked. Not just you, Torvak said. You will be the center. The first spoke in a wheel, but others from different species must willingly accept the marks from Drakvin volunteers. If we can create a network of bonded individuals representing multiple civilizations, the machines will recognize us as legitimate inheritors of the primordial legacy. And if we fail, Jiwoo asked, then the machines will eliminate humanity and the Drakvin, possibly other species too, if they try to interfere. The plan was dangerous and had never been attempted before. Volunteers were called from every species represented on Nexus 7. Taeyong immediately stepped forward. If Deho is doing this, I am with him. Boare joined next, followed by Jiwoo herself. Drakvin volunteers came forward too, young dragons willing to attempt bonding with aliens. Nari would guide the ritual, using ancient texts. Hyan would coordinate the defense if the machines attacked during the ceremony. But they needed more. They needed representatives from dozens of species, all willing to risk their lives on an ancient ritual that might not even work. Deho spoke to the gathered aliens in the station's central hall. Hundreds of different species watched him, some curious, many afraid. He stood before them, the marks on his skin glowing softly. "I am nobody special," Deho began. "I am a mechanic who fixes broken things. But I learned something important the day I ran into that fire. Sometimes you do not need a reason to help someone. Sometimes you just need to see that they are scared and alone." He gestured to Vera, who stood beside him, now nearly grown. "She trusted me when she had no reason to. That trust created this bond. Now I am asking you to trust too. Not me, but each other. These machines attack us because they fear what we might become. Let us show them what we choose to be." The response was overwhelming. More volunteers stepped forward than they needed. Representatives from species who barely spoke to each other agreed to attempt the bonding. Hope began to replace fear. The ritual took 3 days to prepare. They cleared the largest cargo bay on the station, creating a circular pattern on the floor using light emitters. Deho stood at the center with Vera. Around them in a circle stood 20 volunteers from different species. Behind each volunteer stood a young Drachman, ready to offer the bond. Nari began the ancient words, her voice strong and clear. The ritual required each Drachman to share breath and intention with their chosen partner, pressing foreheads together while the marked one at the center channeled a connection through himself. Deho felt the first connection snap into place like a circuit completing. Taeyong gasped as marks spread across his arms, different in pattern from Deho's but clearly related. Then Bore connected, her marks appearing like silver fire. Jiwoo followed, then others, each connection adding to a growing network that Deho could feel expanding in his mind. The pain was incredible. Each new bond felt like lightning running through his body. But Vera was there, sharing the burden, her strength supporting him. Through their original bond, she whispered encouragement. "You can do this. We can do this together." More connections formed. The network grew. Deho could feel the emotions and thoughts of dozens of beings, all different, all unique, but all choosing to trust. The marks spread from person to person, creating patterns that glowed with combined light. Then something shifted in space around the station. The machines had arrived. 3 massive constructs appeared, their surfaces dark and ancient. They moved toward Nexus 7 with clear hostile intent. Hyan's defense fleet engaged immediately, but their weapons barely scratched the machine armor. Inside the cargo bay, the ritual reached its peak. All 20 volunteers were connected now, their marks glowing in harmony. Deho felt like he was burning from the inside out, but he held on. This had to work. Nari spoke the final words of the ritual, and Deho released all the energy he had been holding. The marks flared brilliant gold, visible even outside the station. A wave of pure intention spread outward, carrying a message to the attacking machines. "We are not your enemy. We choose unity over dominance. We are worthy." The machines stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, their weapons powered down. Ancient sensors scanned the station, detecting the completed bond network. Calculations ran through programming thousands of years old. Finally, the machines transmitted a single message in a language so ancient that even Drachman scholars barely recognized it. Inheritors recognized. Directive revised. Protection protocol active. The machines did not leave, but they stopped attacking. They took up positions around Nexus 7 as guardians instead of destroyers. The bleeding stopped. Across the galaxy, the automated systems deactivated their weapons and went dormant once more. Deho collapsed, completely exhausted. Vera caught him, her strength keeping him upright. Through their bond, he felt her pride and love. Around them, the other bonded individuals helped each other stand. They were different species, different worlds, but now they were connected in a way that went beyond words. 6 months passed. Nexus 7 became the headquarters of the Mark Council, a new organization dedicated to maintaining peace between species. The bonded individuals, now called the Mark Ones, served as diplomats and mediators. Their unique perspective, able to feel emotions across species barriers, made them invaluable in preventing conflicts. Deho returned to his work in the maintenance bay, though he was interrupted often for council duties. Taeyong worked beside him. occasionally complaining that being marked did not make paperwork any easier. They still shared meals, still joked like they always had, but now they understood each other on a deeper level. Bo-RA trained new security officers in multi-species cooperation, her marks making her uniquely qualified to teach empathy alongside combat skills. Ji-Woo led the council with the same practical wisdom she had always shown, now enhanced by her ability to sense the true intentions of those she negotiated with. Hyen and Nari visited often, proud of their daughter and grateful to the human who had saved her. Vera had grown into a beautiful young dragon, strong and confident. She served as a bridge between the marked council and traditional Draklin society, honored by both. One evening, Daeho stood by the observation window, looking out at the stars. The machine still floated in the distance, silent guardians watching over them. Vera joined him, her presence warm and familiar through their bond. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Running into that fire?" Daeho smiled, touching the marks on his arm. They had become part of him, as natural as breathing. Never. That moment changed everything. But you know what? I would do it again. Not because of prophecies or saving the galaxy, just because someone needed help. "That is why it worked," Vera said softly. "The ritual, the bonds, all of it. You did not help me to gain power or glory. You helped because it was right." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching ships from 100 different worlds arrive and depart from the station. Each carried beings who were learning to see past their differences, to find common ground. The work was hard and would never be finished, but it was work worth doing. A young mechanic arrived for training the next day, nervous and eager. Daeho showed him the engines, explained the systems, shared the knowledge that had once saved his life in that burning cargo bay. When the young mechanic asked why he spent time teaching instead of focusing on council business, Daeho just smiled. Because sometimes the most important thing you can do is help one person. Everything else builds from there. The marks on his skin glowed softly in agreement, carrying the warmth of all the bonds he had made, all the trust freely given. He was still just a mechanic who fixed broken things. But now he understood that the most important repairs were not to machines, but to the connections between hearts, between minds, between the stars themselves.